one guy that did real good, like that top winner or whatever. I can't remember his name.
The weird looking one.
Okay, I think it's live now. Alright, go ahead and take out these theories or write down stuff you don't know. We'll put it down here so it's easier, so y'all don't have to walk in front of the camera. Genesis, you're gonna have to walk around the camera or sit closer over here in the back right now. Or what? Hang on, you'll find out. So it's easier for y'all to spin it because I want y'all to be responsible for your own points.
Okay.
So that'll be easier for y'all to do it. Everyone do strengths?
Wheel. So wait, what does the orange thing
You
mean?
sure? You have to take notes then. You can't sleep.
What does the orange thing mean? Is that like good?
I can't. This one?
Yeah, 100.
I think it should. I think we said it's just one. We might change it after the first round. This will just kind of like a practice to see.
Just one, but it has a star
Can I
on it.
ingest this?
No. Alright, what is due Tuesday though?
Paper.
Oh!
Which paper is it, Chris? Good, you can still see me.
Think about it or the write about it.
Yep, it's the right about.
It's
Alright.
the second draft.
It's the final draft. If you cough in your hand, you get more because you just infected your hands.
Yes!
You really want
Yes, thank you.
Alright, you can't spin if you're not going to do it correctly. You understand, Chris? Alright, same thing for you.
Don't break it.
So that way you don't get. Alright, yeah. Alright, if I put my hand on top of it and you do somehow enough force to have it come flying off, you are now banned from spinning it. So, 9th and 10th grade have been doing it and doing fine with it. But if it causes it to fall off, then no, you're not using it. Alright, so thinking back over it, because you had a good review yesterday, partly for it. We're going to hopefully finish up the textbook, either like this chapter, either today or tomorrow, when we wrap it up. Alright, we'll start with Brecken. Loop around, Brecken knows what to do. Alright, Brecken, thinking back over it. What was the leader of France during this time period that was waiting just for Great Britain to ally with the South before he did? You do it?
What's it line the stars for?
I was gonna play that game and then change my mind. So just leave it.
Yeah, we saw the weird thing.
Yeah, it has to make all the way at least one round. You're on your own. So you have to make at least one round. You can't just go, you got it. No, that's not how that works. Just making sure. Alright, what is the name for the British ship that was stopped by the Union? We'll just go around in a circle.
Train.
Train. Let's go completely in a circle. Can't really notice show them. That's why I don't just put stand on that side of it.
That's at 13, right? That's gonna trip me
Alright,
out.
for creature reference, it goes longer than 5 seconds. I gotta stop it.
Wow.
It almost went the
That's
same
big.
spot.
Don't look in the middle of that.
Alright, what is the name for the warship that the British built for the South? I guess I'm just not in the shot anymore. I'm sorry,
The
dude.
name of the ship that the Alabama?
Alabama. That's big. The last one in 5 seconds. I gotta
As
stop
hard
it.
as you can. Why'd you go that way?
That's fine.
Wow.
How do we keep going?
I don't
Alright,
know.
who's got Abraham Lincoln? Good job. What do you want me to spin for you?
I'll spin for it.
No, what we do is you spin. If you get it wrong, the next person
It's
gets
rigged.
it, they get to spin for your negative points.
It was 20. It was on 20.
Okay,
Well, we don't
so
do
if it
that.
was in the middle for it, I'm just gonna pull it one direction or the other. I can't see from the back of the values are, so whatever I pull it to is just it. Alright, so what is the minute that abolished slavery from
13.
Yep, that's it.
Nice.
You can reach it from 10 down, either.
Will.
Why does it sound like that?
It's our. Oh, man.
Alright, what is the name for the party that supported Abraham Lincoln for his re-election?
I got this one.
I think some of you got half credit for it.
It's in, right?
Just start with it in.
BB.
National Union Party.
National Union Party. Some of you I gave half credit for.
I got like
National
Liberty Republic.
You gave us
I
the
put
quizzes?
federal.
Not quite yet. I'll go back to the end of class. I forgot.
Hey, that's middle.
That's middle.
No, that's 21. That's 20. Oh, it's fine. Yeah.
Ew.
Oh,
I believe everyone passed.
come on.
Alright, what is the name for?
Nope.
What is
I've only
it?
got one.
Everyone's only got one.
This is starting.
Alright, what is the name for Lincoln's vice president?
Wait, sorry.
Were a lot of presidents, vice presidents at one point?
Remember most of them, like, to be secretary of state, in a lot of cases come in to be as president. Because vice president was considered just kind of like the plan B, it wasn't important.
That was
I'll take
so
it. I'll take it.
That was
I'll go
so
for it.
pressured.
I had to stop the going. Alright, so, I already asked who shot Abraham thinking about yesterday, who was kind of the, I guess evangelist is the best way to put it. He's
Dwight
been,
L. Moody.
good job.
What is it?
Spin
I
the
said
other
L stand for?
Spin the other way, Chris.
Dwight
think it says-
E.
You
Eisenhower.
already know it's Lloyd.
That's not a
did not
complete
go.
spin. I
It
can
is
throw this
not.
sticker on
Well,
the back if you
technically that
want.
was
Sure.
complete.
It's got to be Lloyd.
That's in the middle.
You
I can't-
ain't getting that large
She
amount.
moved it to the other middle.
Alright, let's see, what was the organization that was the forerunner of the American Red Cross? It starts with an S.
What's the question?
Forerunner of the American Red Cross, not the person. Like what organization was it? Alright, so so we'll move around. Whoever gets it right gets to spin, but it's negative values for Genesis. Okay.
Yeah.
What?
Okay, do you know the answer?
American Society or something?
Okay, what was the forerunner of the American Red Cross?
The forerunner of the American Red Cross?
That's
Society of America?
No.
It's that sanitary thing.
You going just sanitary?
It's sanitary something.
That's
Do you know the correct answer?
Yeah, the sanitarium.
What?
It's the sanitarium.
Nope.
What is it?
Sanitary Society.
Okay, you're close enough. I'll
Yeah.
have it. Sanitary Commission.
Wait, is it
Come
my
on,
question
you
or
can
does
answer.
it go around?
What?
Now that I've been
Again,
asked?
I
No,
got
Genesis. It was Genesis' question. So it's right. You have to go all the way
you
around.
have to get over 20, Brecken.
That's one. That's one.
That's one.
Oh.
Got lucky.
I was trying to.
Why don't you double that? If you hit the star, it
Negative
should be like-
2.
Oh, we said just one for now. We can always change it later on. This is kind of like the first round, just so you know
So
what
it's
goes.
kind of like tweaking. But it gets
We changed it again
Yeah, but
today.
see, okay, how it goes. Like I practiced it in geography since there's only 4 kids in that class to see how it goes.
We should do whoever has the
We
lowest
did that
number.
today. We did that. That will be positive. But if somebody gets it right for negative, they gotta go over there and throw it at the dartboard for the
We
negative
had
one.
complex.
Ooh.
that sounds.
I like the
That sounds
dartboard.
really
I'm gonna say we might do it later. Like I said, we're just introducing it.
We
So
don't
right
have a lot
now,
to actually learn to do.
we're almost done.
Yeah.
We'll finish
We have
at
like
the end
2
of the day.
minutes.
Chemistry is about to be so fun the next few days. We don't have anything.
Ooh,
Yeah,
I just
we're gonna
broke
be
my
watching a video. Normally I show this video way at the beginning of the year about the War of 1812, but you can watch it now.
We're gonna watch the video today?
And no, we'll either start it tomorrow or we'll start it Monday.
I was talking about chemistry.
Oh yeah, chemistry. Yeah, we're gonna be done.
Because we're already
I think
done.
we're
We're
already done.
finishing up. We'll finish up lab 9. We'll talk about this later. We'll finish up lab 9
Anyways.
tomorrow, and then we're moving on.
Back to review.
Yep.
Moving on to what?
Alright, so okay, we talked about him. Who came up with the motto "In God We Trust"? So it was your question originally, so now it's yours.
Chase.
There you go, him and Chase.
Wait, he stole though.
Yeah, but he just stole.
Please spin the other way.
Look at it, look at it.
Dude, that's under over 12 seconds.
You might as well let it
No, that's one. That's one. That's one. Don't stop it.
Who's that?
That's one.
That's one.
That's one.
That's one. What is one?
No, it's a
It's
one.
not
just-
anything?
It's just one.
No. Hey, I still got one though. Give her that.
Alright.
You ain't ever
We
gonna
should
get
make
one.
that one 100.
You don't
Yeah,
think
we
it's
should
right
do
now?
that.
in the future.
It's the orange.
Because it's got a
I
star
said
and
50. I said
everything.
50.
There's a
That's
star and
too
everything.
much.
We'll talk about it in the future. Like I said, it's just like a practice kind of problem to see how it goes. We
I
can
still got
always
the
adjust
one
it
in your
later on.
face.
Alright.
I said it's the one.
Alright, who is the chaplain your
100.
book talks about? Who's the chaplain?
Let's start with it.
His last name begins with a J.
With a J.
His first name also begins with a J.
I should say that was in the middle.
Janice Joplin.
That's not that name.
John Jones.
Final answer?
Yeah.
That's it.
That's a
Actually,
good
good
guess.
job.
Wait, that's his whole name?
Yeah, that was it. John William Jones.
John Bone
What?
Jones.
I didn't even know that! I just said it.
Okay.
John Bone Jones.
John Jones. You just guessed.
Dude, I did.
That's
But
one.
that's
One.
a
That's
normal
one.
JJ.
That's one.
No, that's
Oh.
15.
That's 13, 12.
Alright.
You're wrong.
Think about generals that tried to benefit African Americans or the South. That's easy.
Yeah,
Dead
obviously.
by this point.
Obviously.
Okay, so who was the one that founded the Howard Theological Seminary for African Americans?
Please start with.
Oliver Howard. As I said, I was like, there's no good way to
Yeah.
ask that.
My wrist is in pain.
I'm sorry.
I
That's
can't
one.
even
That's
really
one.
write.
Don't worry.
That's
You
one.
know the
I
rest.
might throw up pretty soon.
I said what?
16.
Right. So, have you tried icing it or anything?
She ices it earlier.
Alright,
Stop.
who founded Hampton University? This one's not nearly as easy as the previous one, I'm sorry. Booker T. Washington goes to it, that's why it's important.
What's the start with a W?
His last name starts with an A.
Is it a weird name?
No.
Not super weird, but it's not common.
Anthony.
Final answer?
Yes.
Nope. Alright, you get a chance to reverse.
Susan.
Yeah.
Go with it, 'cause we don't have a whole lot of time.
Alexander.
Nope.
Good name.
What's the question again?
This is for my
Alright,
negative
who
force, right?
founded,
Yes.
who founded Hampton University?
After none of us could get good.
And the blender.
What was it?
And the blender.
No.
The plantation, is that what you said?
Hampton University.
You went from school to plantation.
I swear I heard plantation.
Hampton University.
We'll say he's talking about the fruit.
Let's see here. We already know it's Applebee's.
Your mouth, please?
Yeah.
No.
Anderson.
What?
Anderson.
Nope. Alright, write down this so you're safe, Chris. So,
Wow.
Samuel Chapman Armstrong. So Armstrong, that's not super
Stretch Armstrong?
common, but it's not.
Dude, that's how I'm gonna remember it.
Neil Armstrong.
That's
Stretch
all I remember.
Armstrong.
No, it's
He
okay.
actually, they never went to the movie.
Alright, back to you, Chris, since nobody knew it. Alright, who was the ordained minister? He continued to serve his church even after the war, but he was a general in the South.
That was awesome, sir.
His last name begins with a P.
Hmm.
Who we've had this last name previously? It looks
Is
familiar.
he a past president?
Oh, you know what? This last name is a future it's not him. This is really similar to a future president's last name. That's what I'm thinking of. I'm sorry, we haven't talked about him yet.
Pierce?
Final answer?
Yeah.
No.
Oh,
Jesus?
I wanna cry.
When did that one?
It's Chris's.
Then Chris. I thought Chris was.
I'm trying to make
So-
I'm trying to make
Oh,
Brian
I'm
down.
sorry. I think I confused you. There's an act passed underneath the president.
Is it
That's
what?
called an act. That's what I was thinking. We haven't talked about him yet. Let me get another guess. Because it's not a president's last name. It's just that he's known for this act. So I'm sorry for confusing him.
A P.
Let me guess again.
Is it a weird name?
Yes. I mean, not crazy weird, but we haven't talked about it at all yet.
Big word.
It's over 5 letters, so I guess that counts as big.
So it's 9, like
Peterson.
Nope. Alright,
Patterson.
no.
Patrick Peterson.
Let's see here.
You know it?
It looks like really Patrick.
Nope.
Parker.
Nope. Oh, it's back to
That was his
you.
question.
Alright,
You look at it.
William Nelson Pendleton. So
Pendleton.
I need a rhyme about a pendulum.
That's
Oh,
my
I got
nano's
this.
last name.
Cool. Alright, so Pendleton, make a note for him.
What is it?
I didn't know.
Pendleton, he was a Southern general and he went back to basically be a pastor.
Yeah, I wrote pendulum on accident.
Oh.
That's the pen.
Alright, what is the term? So this will be the last question for you. If you get it wrong, we'll just move on to this. What is the name for the African American? Well, since nobody got it, we're basically back to him again. Alright, so what is the name for the freed slaves of this time period?
Friedman.
With a D?
Yes.
Yes.
Freeman.
You see, free men, it's wrong.
Why?
Because free men refers to people that have never been
She
free.
literally explained this yesterday.
Yeah.
They never went a full circle.
I remember this.
Alright, let's see. What is the name for Lincoln's plan that said as long as 10% of the population of voters swear a loyalty oath to the Union, they can remake their state governments?
It's 10% of
I
them.
mean a number.
10% of them.
What is the name for Lincoln's plan where just 10% of the voters have to swear a loyalty oath? Yeah.
What
Somebody's
is
been
that?
for you?
I want to go.
What?
That's one.
No, just me one.
History.
I can spend
It's
it
in the
on
middle.
one
I know
too.
you're special.
I just want to give you the chance.
No.
Alright, what was the name for the
Special
conservative Republicans that basically wanted their power? They did not want to go along with Lincoln's plan for being more
What's
meaningful.
that sound like?
Senate.
It starts with an R.
Republican.
It's a different name for it.
Come on.
Technically, they're all Republicans because they like particular branch that say no.
Elephants?
Reincarnation.
Excuse
Yeah,
me.
that's what they call them.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
Reincarnation.
You got a final answer?
No.
No. Okay.
Radical.
Radicals.
Reincarnation.
I remember that
Negative.
because John also
Isn't
said
that
that.
what? Did you sacrifice their elephants or we elephants?
No one.
Democrats are.
I don't-
Negative one. Negative one.
I don't know something.
Republicans are
Yeah, who's-
dolphins.
I'm not even gonna count that. I won't lose anyway.
No.
Was that yours?
It's negative.
I already have like 5, so I'm not gonna count that.
Alright, what do we call it? So I think it's the last thing we talked about. Who did I start with?
I don't remember.
Okay, we'll make one more loop so everyone gets a turn. Alright, what do we call it whenever the president doesn't outright veto, but he basically puts it away and forgets it, and forgets about it?
I know.
Starts with P.
Pass.
That's actually a decent guess, but is that your final answer?
Oh,
Pass
I
me
remember this
Nope.
one. Oh, I remember this one.
what is it? What's the
Just repeat.
It's
It's
two,
one.
it's 2 words.
Whenever the president, instead of just vetoing it outright,
Oh!
Yeah,
I remember
sorry.
this one.
forget about it.
Oh, I know.
This one.
I know.
Oh, and
Please
this
don't
was
get
my
nervous.
question.
There's
I
a
know.
It's P and then the second
I
one
know.
starts with a
That
V.
w-
I know it's veto is the second word.
I
Is it
know.
personal veto?
personal veto?
No.
Nope.
Pocket.
Pocket veto. So it's like he puts it in his pocket
That
and
was a
forgets
pocket.
about it. Alright, want me to spend? Okay, this is
Yeah, well,
negative
I'm
for
not
Quentin
I
though.
want to.
Quentin's on lows now.
Am I?
2020.
I might not.
That's in the
That's in the
middle.
middle.
That's 9.
I didn't
Still
look.
Is it my turn or his turn?
Your turn.
Or no, when it's my turn, I got 3 questions because no one got it. So it's his turn.
Well, Genesis got it wrong, so it's a negative value, so that's why it just moves on from him.
Oh.
Alright,
I thought we were like over there or something.
she stole it, but I don't wanna just skip what
Quentin's
she
just
first
wrong
didn't
like
know.
that.
Alright, so, I'm going back.
Oh,
Alright,
okay.
who was supposed to stop Sherman, but he didn't, when Sherman was marching to
Oh, yeah.
Georgia?
What was that, sorry?
H.
H?
H.
Mm.
You got this the other day.
You probably did.
Just guess.
No, I got it too. Hood.
Hood, do you want me to spend for you?
Were you looking at my head?
You acted like you wanted
Yes,
I
to.
had lights on my wrist.
Do not look at my
I didn't go over there.
Bruh.
Yeah, the circle.
No, because it started at 9 and got to 5. There's no way.
The sticker went all the way around.
Are you sure there's not 2
You must have blinked.
No.
Nine
I
to go
don't
around.
look, I'm a lizard.
No lizards.
No, they don't.
Lizards do bleed.
No, they don't.
No, they have that, I don't remember from my.
Membrane.
Nicotine.
Yeah.
Nicotine.
Nicotine.
I didn't ask.
Alright,
Nicotine.
who is known as the Rock of Chickamauga? His last name begins with a T. It sounds more like the first name though.
Thomas.
Thomas, to make sense.
Said DUA.
Geodude.
No. Do not ever say Geodude again. He's weak.
What's the other one?
Is
Alright.
that in the middle?
It's weak.
That's a thing.
Thank you.
What is it? Browser? What is he called? Browser?
Grappler.
Browser.
Alright, what was the South's most costliest victory?
Chance of a fail.
And then he evolves into what?
I can't
There's
remember.
another evolution.
Some
It goes
fat
for
rock.
Okay,
Some
what are you
fat
talking about?
rock.
Pokemon.
Okay, let's move on.
I play Pokemon Go every day.
Let's move
What?
on. Alright, who has plus 15 or more? Okay.
I'm in the negatives.
I'm sorry, Ethan. Alright, who's got 20 or more? 30 or more? I got some good numbers. 40 or more? Alright, 45 or more. Breckenridge.
How did you- you're a cheater.
46.
Don't forget
That's
your
my
candy.
Cheater.
What is that?
Alright,
That's my IQ.
so let's go ahead and let's get into it.
It's my
I'm
five.
gonna stay here.
Would you like to stay there?
My IQ's a
You guys
five.
stay
Can
there.
I move?
No. At least
I didn't
can
get as far as my
Can I
character's
go?
weird.
Did I use somebody's freebie?
I said, never mind.
They've already, sorry, you've already used yours.
You came a year late, Bridget.
Before I throw up.
You have to throw up, then go throw up in the trash can and go to the bathroom.
I didn't go beat you.
Take the trash can with you.
Don't do
Alright, we gotta keep going though, so,
No.
I'm sorry, if you need to go, really go, like, go throw up, then I'm sorry.
He's just trying to get out back.
Just throw up on the
Just trying to
floor.
get.
It's all good.
Okay, I'm recording. Alright, so,
Hey,
we have to go to page 234. Page 234 is where we left off. Now, whenever Abraham Lincoln was assassinated, who became president, Ethan? Andrew Johnson. Now, keep in mind, Congress at least respected President Lincoln for, look, I said 224. So, they respected Abraham Lincoln, and Abraham Lincoln, the people loved him. I'm sorry, 234 is where we left off.
I flipped
So,
right to it. I'm so good. I flipped
You're so good.
they respected Abraham Lincoln, and a lot of people loved Abraham Lincoln, where Abraham Lincoln
So-
probably could have basically convinced Congress to go along with him, but since Abraham Lincoln was assassinated, Andrew Johnson is now in charge, and Congress is not nearly as willing to go along with Andrew Johnson. Yes?
So he was a bad president.
Who?
Do what?
Who?
Yeah.
And I don't know if you would call him that. He was basically
Horrible.
doing like the best you can. Keep in mind, this is the first time we had a president get assassinated and the vice president becomes president. So this is the first time the country's going through this on top of trying to put the Civil War back, trying to put the country back together. So I don't know if Andrew Johnson necessarily a bad president. Just Congress just didn't respect him. There wasn't really a lot of power for the vice president back in this time period. You were just basically plan B. If plan A didn't work out, and so no one really respected plan B all that much. So that was part of the reason why Congress was like, you're here to basically just draw voters, because keep in mind, he was a Democrat, and so they said, okay, you're here just to draw voters, we don't really care that much about you. And Johnson was trying really hard to follow Abraham Lincoln's wishes and footsteps, but Congress was just not having it. Alright, so, make a note for him that Andrew Johnson, he becomes president. No, like how Ethan asked, not necessarily a bad president, just Congress just didn't like him and didn't want to do what he said, so he had an uphill battle for it. Alright, so your book points out that Congress, that they reject Johnson's program. Johnson tried to basically write his Reconstruction program, basically saying, this is what Abraham Lincoln wanted, this is what I'm going to do. And Congress, whenever they came back into session, they basically said, no, we don't care. We're going to do what we want anyway. So there were two people kind of in leadership in Congress that led basically the radicals against Andrew Johnson. Make a note of both of them. So Charles Sumner and Thaddeus Stevens. Make a note of both those people on page 234. So Charles Sumner and Thaddeus Stevens. They maintained that the Confederate States had seceded from the Union, and since they had left, it's up to Congress to allow them to come back into the Union. And so they said it's under the jurisdiction of Congress, not the president. We don't care what you or Abraham Lincoln, may he rest in peace, what he said, that they wanted the power for it. Your book points out that there's a couple of reasons as to how come Congress felt this way. One of the reasons was they really felt like underneath the Constitution that it was Congress's power. They weren't trying to just grab power. Some of them really honestly felt like it really was their responsibility. In some cases, the newly formed government of the South, they had elected senators and House of Representatives, and that were former Confederate civil and military leaders. Why was it kind of tacky of the South to elect senators and House of Representatives who had been part of the Confederacy leadership?
Cause at that point, if they didn't let them vote, they might not be there.
Alright, so they had basically elected
Or let them
senators
be
to go to
elected
Congress,
senators.
but why is it tacky that they picked people that were leaders in the military of the Civil War?
Because they didn't have any other better leaders than that.
They had, okay, well keep in mind that why would the North be offended by it? Let's put it that way. Alright, well it's because, again, the North and the South, they had just fought this whole war over it, and electing someone that is a military leader of the opposing side, the North said, no, you're not going to be in Congress, you people tried to leave, we're not going to let you try to make laws, you were a civil leader or a military leader, no, pick somebody else, and so that's why the North was offended and said, no, you can't do this. Okay.
What did they do with Jeff Davis after the Civil War?
He wasn't executed, but I forget what happened to him. He did not immediately die. He might have died from like poverty or something else later on, but they didn't execute him for being a traitor because they tried to basically pardon him, put the country back together, and they knew it would look bad. So as far as I know, he didn't directly die from it. He might have died from like other complications, but he wasn't like military executed for it. Alright, so that was part of the reason why the South probably should have elected somebody else. It couldn't be every single good person in the South was involved in the Confederacy. There had to be other people they should have elected, but again, they were going through hardship trying to figure out who do we elect, but they should have picked someone else besides a military leader of the Confederacy because the North lost people's sons and husbands, or they lost cousins to it. So because of that, they said, no, you shouldn't elect these people. It's offensive and it's depressing, and we don't want to work with these people. Okay. Oh, but you're raising your hand. I'm sorry. Your book points out as well for it that in the South as well, the South had adopted laws known as black codes. This put limitations on the civil rights of freedmen. Since they couldn't be slaves anymore, the South was trying to find a loophole to still force them into servitude. Because remember, what was the major source of income for the South prior to the Civil War? Reckon. Yeah, agriculture and cotton. So because they just lost their entire workforce, so they were basically trying to say, okay, we can't legally make you slaves anymore, but we're going to do other things to try to limit your freedom or to try to get you back into servitude in another way for it. So again, they shouldn't be doing that either. So a lot of the Southern whites, they were trying to do things in some cases that they shouldn't have been doing, like electing senators who were the military leaders of the Confederacy, or trying to put limitations on the freedmen. They shouldn't have been doing either one of those. But again, they're trying to survive and trying to go through the grieving process, but they're not making the best decisions for it. Your book points out as well, the North, they weren't perfect either though. In some cases, they wanted just power, and they understood that, okay, if we have just the freedmen vote, then they will of course elect Republicans, not Democrats. And so part of it was the North was just being selfish and just wanting to hang on onto their power as well. It's not like the North is being perfect and the South is not. Both sides are making poor decisions. Alright, so Congress takes control of Reconstruction. Congress wants to protect the rights of the freedmen, so the first thing they did was pass the Freedmen's Bureau. Make a note for that. That was to provide food and clothing for the freed slaves. Because remember, the freedmen, they didn't have property, they didn't have a lot of cases any money or any types of land or any homes. So they said, okay, we want to give them food and clothing. But keep in mind, is that the government's job to do things like that? Quentin? No, it's not. Particularly in this time period, they hadn't started any type of welfare practices. So they meant well by saying, okay, we want to help out the freedmen, and it is good to help out and to help out for people that are less fortunate than you. What is a better way, typically besides just relying on the government? Does anyone know how traditionally before this time period as well? Genesis?
Get a job.
Yeah, okay, get a job. Okay, well let's say you want to help someone and you want to donate money, but you don't know them directly. What do you typically donate to?
Charity.
Yeah, so charity organizations, or in a lot of cases, churches were involved in this time period as well. So that's how come people typically relied on churches or other charitable organizations to help out those who are less fortunate than them if they knew about them. Now, a lot of people, they didn't turn to the government. Now, again, Republicans, they want to help out the slaves or the freedmen, so because of that, they want to go ahead and help them out right now. They also passed the Civil Rights Bill. This is to guarantee citizenship to freedmen born in the United States. President Johnson vetoed both bills. Now, it's not because President Johnson hated the freedmen. That's how it come, if you look it up on like websites, they talk about that he was racist. Okay, no. But he felt like the first one was basically unconstitutional because he was saying it's not a good idea. It's not the government's job to basically give out free handouts, particularly in this time period. That was a new concept. Now, today, we're more used to it. But back then, he said it's not a good idea for the government to start providing food and shelter. That's not a good practice to start up. If they need help, they need to go to a charity organization or rely on the churches or try to find out how to better themselves. It's not good long term for the government just to keep helping them over and over and over and over again. It's a drain on resources, and ultimately it won't help them out. And he also vetoed the second one because he said the second one was unconstitutional. Now, they changed it and amended to the Constitution later on, but he was saying just passing a civil rights bill to guarantee citizens and the freedmen born in the United States, he was saying that's cumbersome and you don't need a law to help protect them. If they're a freedman or a citizen, then it's automatically part of it. So he was saying the second one in particular was unconstitutional. The first one he felt more of, it was just unnecessary. Alright, so the 14th Amendment though, Congress does officially make the 14th Amendment part of the United States Constitution. Congress, as a side note, both overrun both of his vetoes by a 2/3 majority vote. They went ahead and overrode his vetoes. They said, nope, we don't care, we're going to do this anyway. Your book kind of gives a synopsis of the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment on the box on page 135. Let's go ahead and talk through those really quick, and then your book focuses more on the responses to them. Alright, so who wants to read first? Alright, Genesis.
3 amendments were added to the Constitution between 1865 and 1870. Because all three were direct results of the Civil War and Reconstruction, they are often referred to as the Reconstruction Amendments. These amendments profoundly affected the course of American history.
Good job. Alright, what's your next? Bracken.
Ratified in 1865, the 13th Amendment permanently abolished slavery from all areas within the jurisdiction of the United States.
Yep, that's it. Just make a note for that one. That one, 30th Amendment, abolish slavery. Alright, let's read the next one. It is a longer one. Alright, Ethan.
The 14th Amendment ratified in 1868 still plays an important role in the course of American government today. The first section of the amendment gave citizenship to freedmen and became the first official definition of American citizenship. The first section of the amendment further declared that states are free to take a citizen's rights, privileges, or property without due process of law. U.S. Constitution Amendment 14, Section 1.
Yeah, your book points out for this one, the 14th Amendment, that it defines what a citizen is. This becomes more important later on by saying, like, the people of Puerto Rico. Okay, what rights do they have? Because they're a territory of the United States, does that mean that they're a citizen? Do they get to vote? And so that's why that definition applies later on as we acquire more territory. Alright, let's read the next bit. Alright, Quentin, and then we'll let Chris take the last bit.
The 14th Amendment also deprives certain high officials of political privileges and declared that states should deprive citizens of all rights to have their representation in the House of Representatives reduced proportionately.
Yeah, proportionally.
The last section of the amendment declared the Confederate debt void. It was not to be honored by the federal government or of any state.
Yeah, so that last bit of the 14th Amendment doesn't really apply today, it only applied to the Confederacy, and today, we kind of ignore that because it doesn't really have a whole lot of application today. Alright, Chris, last little bit.
The 15th Amendment guaranteed slaves the right to vote. It also forbade states to deny voting privileges to anyone on account of race, color, or previous condition of servitude.
Good job. Alright, so make a note of the synopsis form. 13th Amendment, abolished slavery. 14th Amendment, this one defined what a citizen is, so that's why that one is important for it. It gave citizenship to the freedmen and defined what citizenship was. 15th Amendment, it guaranteed the former slaves the right to vote. Not women yet. Women come later, but it should say, okay, these are the three main ideas in regard to the African Americans at the time period and a couple of other important parts of it. Alright, anyone have any questions about that? Yes, Genesis?
Now, what is the point of giving the president the power to veto and Congress is just gonna override it?
Because they want to, okay, because how does the bill become law? We're gonna watch the video, I forgot to do it today. Okay, so how does the bill become a law? Okay, that's why we're gonna watch the video. Anyone remember how does the bill become a law?
It has to go through the House of Representatives, Senate.
Yep, and then, just to make sure though, because again, the president was just kind of be like the last kind of checks and balance for it, because remember, the president, he's elected not by popular vote, but with the idea of all the electoral votes. He should represent basically the people in general. So it's one of those, even if you have people in Congress, if they do something to where it seems like a good idea, the president, you have a final say that says, it just doesn't seem like a good idea. Since he represents kind of like the whole country, he can veto it and say, okay, I know you guys think it's a good idea, but I still don't think it's a good idea. They can override him by a 2/3 majority vote in case the president is tyrannical or if he's just abusing power. So that's the idea behind it. So if Congress, now keep in mind, to just pass the House of Representatives or the Senate, you have to have just slightly more for all of them to rally together to get a 2/3 majority vote. That's basically saying most of them are agreeing we're going to override the president at this point.
Does it work backwards too? If the president wants to do something, does Congress veto the president?
They can impeach the president. This actually happens to Andrew Johnson. There's actually been 3 presidents in history that have been impeached. Does anyone know? Okay,
Wait,
Nixon.
wait, raise your hand, Okay.
The dude that did this, the president that did the peace sign?
I don't know the president of the piece on the top of my head. I know
It's
the
either
prime
Lyndon B.
minister.
Johnson. No, it's either Lyndon B. Johnson or Eisenhower.
It's not Eisenhower.
I remember one
Trump.
president, like Trump.
They get impeached.
He actually got impeached for
Who?
it. Now keep in mind, impeach just means you go
Donald
on
Trump.
trial. Yeah.
Yeah.
He goes on trial. You do not get fired for
Wait,
being
Trump?
impeached.
When did he get impeached?
In 2019, I think it was in
I
December.
thought he didn't get impeached.
What?
Yeah, I thought that got
He did.
canceled.
Yeah.
Yeah, he got impeached,
But
but
it
nothing
didn't work.
happened for it. Impeach just means you go on trial before the Senate,
Yeah.
and the Senate said, okay, there's no proof, you still stay in office.
What was it for? Treason or something?
Lots of like red. They said,
Cooperating with Russia or whatever.
they said high misdemeanor, I believe is like the official wording for it.
And yet they found nothing.
But, okay, so again, they decided with the Senate, okay, the re-election's coming up in November, because this happened, I believe, in December of 2019. They said, the election's coming up, there's no point going through the full-on, like, actually going through all of this. You're gonna have to start campaigning anyway, so we're just gonna ignore you. And so that's basically what it boiled down to. But he was impeached with the idea of he went on trial. But just because you're impeached doesn't mean you get fired as a president. You just go on trial. Alright, so who was the other one?
The other, Nixon.
Actually, no, Nixon resigned before, so he
Yeah,
actually
so-
quit
Clinton.
ahead of time. What?
Clinton.
Clinton was impeached. Those are the 3 that was impeached. So
I do not
Johnson,
have.
No.
Never mind.
Okay.
I do not have. Never mind.
Relationships with Congress.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. We're talking about Clinton later on. Alright,
Yeah.
really quick, we're gonna watch. I
Question.
mean, not like today,
Wait,
but
is
like
Monica Lewinsky in there?
what?
Monica Lewinsky in the book? Is Monica Lewinsky in the book? I'm
They
not making
reference the
appropriate.
event. Your book tries to
I
keep
do
every
not
president
have
in the best light
relations
for
with
it.
that
We're
woman.
gonna talk about Hiroshima.
Yes. So that's probably the reason why they reference it, but they
Oh.
don't say like point blank what it is, because they're trying to keep every president in the best
It's a
light.
PG book because it's a Christian book as well. Even a public school might do that.
Ooh, I found
No,
Yeah, it's one of those that want to
no.
keep it just basic. Now, keep in mind, you can find dirt on every president, even George Washington. You can go dig up dirt on the president. So your book's just pointing, okay, here's the best things to note about it, and and they're human beings, they're gonna make mistakes. Some mistakes are more costly than others, and so some of them affect things more so than others. And so your book tries to put it in pilot. So your book references it, but doesn't get like down into like the nitty gritty of this is what happened. No, again, you can find it out later on. Okay,
I have a
which question? Hang on. Okay.
Which one of the Bush ladies still alive?
Eleanor.
I think it is
That's
Ellen.
Roosevelt.
No, I don't remember the top of my head. I'm sorry.
Cause
I know there's. I know one of them is still. I know.
Rosa Parks.
No.
it's either Laura
Okay.
or Joan.
Alright,
What is Congress primarily made up of?
Congress is made. What's a Congress
She
made
can say.
Oh, Congress is, I'm wondering.
Alright, it's made up of the Senate and House Representatives.
Hillary Clinton's in here.
What?
There's Bill Clinton.
Yeah, I found it.
Yep, we'll get
Wow,
there.
this book is already corrupt.
Gotta talk about him. Gotta talk about history. Alright, really quick, we're gonna watch how a bill comes along. No, we'll watch
Biden?
it. We'll watch it at the end because it
Yes.
only lasts about 5
Joe
minutes. So we'll
Biden's
just do it at
in
the end for it.
Argument.
They did it really quick. Okay, nope, we gotta keep your focus. Go back to page 135. Don't get distracted. 135. 135. Everybody's talking about it. So, Mark, Mark 30th Amendment, 14th Amendment, 15th Amendment, mark all those. Alright, now you can flip the page. Alright, so, Tennessee quickly ratified whatever Congress said because they realized, this looks like it's about to get bad. So, Congress proposed the 14th Amendment, and Tennessee decided we're going to go ahead and get in on this because I want to hurry up and get in before Congress starts making other rules and other stipulations. So Tennessee's hurry up and gets restore the Union. The other southern states, they rejected because they were hoping eventually Andrew Johnson could kind of help them sway Congress back towards being more lenient. So they hold out and they wait for it. So Congress ends up passing the Reconstruction Act. This divides the former Confederacy, except for Tennessee, because Tennessee was already part of it now, into 5 military districts. This is not more lenient, so the South gambled and they gambled wrong. So they got divided up into 5 military districts, and they gave federal military officers broad powers in each district. So they were supposed to keep kind of like martial law, kind of not, but basically the military gets to rule over them for it. To eliminate the military rule, each state was required to adopt a new state constitution guaranteeing the freemen the right to vote. The Constitution had to be approved by the voters of each state and be approved by the voters of that state and by Congress. Each state was required to ratify the 14th Amendment, and then once the 15th Amendment gets passed by Congress, they have to ratify that as well for it.
I'm to be done.
Wait, raise your hand.
What happens to be done?
You had to say military rule to where basically the federal government rules over you. And the South did not like that. Because remember, the South had already tried to come out. So this is basically just more oppression in their eyes for it. So that's the reason why they just don't like
Like,
it.
what would happen if you didn't accept it?
You stayed underneath military rule. You couldn't get the military to leave basically. They would stay put and keep ruling over you until you did it. So it's just one of those. It's making life more difficult in front of the South. Now again, the South is not being perfect either, so it's not like the South is victims. Now the South needs to hurry up and get with it as well. But again, it was 2 different views, and with so many people that died in the Civil War, everyone's kind of being petty to everybody else for it. President Johnson gets impeached during this time period because Congress keeps trying to pass things. And Andrew Johnson said, remember, is trying to be more lenient towards the South, so he kept vetoing what they were trying to do. So he vetoed the Freedmen's Bureau's bill, the Civil Rights Bill, the Reconstruction Acts, and so because of that, Congress said, okay, we're going to try to do something to maybe try to get around him. So they passed the Tenure of Office Act. This prevented the president from dismissing any civil officer that had been appointed with the consent of the Senate unless it had first been obtained by the Senate's approval for dismissal. What that means was, okay, the president couldn't fire a cabinet member without Senate's approval. Now keep in mind, whenever the president appoints a cabinet member, does he have to get Senate approval then? Ethan? Yes, he does. So that's part of the reason why that is still in effect today. But they also said, okay, you can't fire or dismiss a cabinet member without our approval as well. Well, Johnson, he ends up dismissing or firing Secretary of War Edwin N. Stanton. Make a note of him. Because he was cooperating with the radicals in Congress. Now, if you are a cabinet member, who are you supposed to be working for? Quentin.
People.
The what?
The president.
The president. And so President Johnson said, okay, you're working with the people in Congress that are against me. You're fired. You're not a good subordinate. I need to go home. I don't want you. And so because of that, Congress said, oh, you fired him. We're going to impeach you now. We can get you for this. So that's where this officially comes up from. So they accused President Johnson of wrongdoing, and they tried him before the Senate. We call this impeachment. Kind of how like we talked about earlier. This is just called impeachment. Whenever you go on trial, you're not fired. A lot of people assume if you get impeached, you are fired. No, you just go on trial before the Senate. The House has charged him with a long list of high crimes and misdemeanors, but the main thing they said was he violated the Tenure of Office Act. President Johnson said, no, I did not hire Edwin M. Stanton. Abraham Lincoln hired him, and you approved him. I did not do so. So since I did not hire him, I can fire him based on the wording. And so because of that, the Senate said, yeah, he's right. Okay. And so because of that, the Senate did not get the 2/3 majority in order to actually impeach him and to actually find him guilty for it. Your book points out though, a couple of the Republican senators said, okay, we don't want to be swayed by the radicals. Keep in mind, they're all pretty much Republicans, and the radicals wanted him impeached, but some of the Republicans said, no, okay, we don't like what he's doing, but he hasn't actually committed a crime, and we're not going to just impeach him just because we don't like him. That's not fair. So that's why they said, okay, we're not going to go ahead and just impeach him at this point. Alright, so your book points out the Southern states, as they're reamended into the Union, they have to ratify the 14th Amendment and then the 15th Amendment as they come into it. Now, in the election of 1868, this is whenever the Republicans, they nominate Ulysses S. Grant for president. Now, he won mainly on the strength of the North, but then also the freedmen, they could vote as well in the South. Keep in mind, why was it a little bit tacky of the North to elect Ulysses S. Grant as the presidential candidate? Right. Yeah, he was a general. So keep in mind that this is the person that led the army of the North, and he killed a lot of the Southerners. And so because of that, it was a little bit tacky. They probably should have picked somebody else just because it's in the face of the South that we're going to pick the winning general to be the next president. So, what?
Is there something wrong with his eye in the picture?
I don't think so.
Is it
But
left
I mean,
eye?
it does come across funny, doesn't it?
It looks like he has it looks like he has, what is it called, the eye, the evil eye.
Alright, just keep in mind, he was a good president, but keep in mind that since he wasn't a very good politician, some people, they did some things during his administration that they shouldn't have, and it kind of marred his reputation a little bit. Now, they found him completely, innocent of all wrongdoing, but there are several other people that basically used him, and so because of that, he was not the best politician, but he was a good man and a good president. Your book just references very loosely by saying that there were scandals by dishonest businessmen and government officials, but no one questioned Grant. They understood he was a good person, but he didn't understand politics very well. So because of that, several things happened to where that's why he doesn't get real. That's the reason why his administration is kind of marred by these events. Alright, we'll go ahead and we'll stop there. We're just about out of time, and I want to watch how the bill becomes a law. Alright, time for tonight. Yes, Thursday. Read pages 239, 240, 239, 240. Alright, answer on page 240. Let's see. Actually, you can do on page 140, 4 through 10. Because there's actually a lot of terms that last a little bit. So, 4 through... Oh, you know what? I skipped a page. I'm sorry. I'm very sorry. 237 to 240. There's something in the chat. 237 to 240. Answer on page 140, 4 through 10. 4 through 10.
I have a question.
Okay, quickly, what time
Nope.
will becomes a law?
Why do you have so many cups?
Because I forgot to take them down.
Do you need
One,
that sauce?
two,
I know.
3,
Four.
4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
Oh, some of these are for pens and stuff.
I know,
so
but still,
let's-
it's not cups.
We're gonna calm down before she uses it.
You want a cup for Christmas this morning?
If you want to give me a cup, that's fine.
I already got my gift.
My mom
so-
said that she got.
No one wants cash.
I don't have, no, like, I already bought the gift for them.
My mom said she got the gift from my teacher.
Can I bring a calculator? Yeah, that'll be $1. All I ever
Not $1.
Happy
I got diffusers for all of them.
Alright.
Yeah, like,
Alright, no talking during the video. Jimmy, I don't think it's going to show up very well. I'm sorry. I'll try to show it. You can find this on YouTube though. It's extremely common.
Perkins
People love
wants
it.
to the door.
Yeah.
Technically, Quentin's closest to the door.
Oh,
Alright,
okay.
so you are both get the lights.
And I'm in front of the camera, so.
Alright,
I like
Tommy.
it 'cause your body grows bigger.
We're gonna tap for it. It's the intro.
Just a bit.
It's the intro for it.
Oh.
Whew, you sure gotta climb a lot of steps to get to this Capitol building here in Washington. Well, I wonder who that sad little scrap of paper is.
I'm just a bill, yes, I'm only a bill, and I'm sitting here on Capitol Hill. Well, it's a long, long journey to the capital city. It's a long, long wait while I'm sitting in committee, but I know I'll be a law someday. At least I hope and pray that I will, but today I am still just a bill.
Gee, Bill, you certainly have a lot of patience and courage.
Well, I got this far. When I started, I wasn't even a bill. I was just an idea. Some folks back home decided they wanted a law passed, so they called their local congressman, and he said, "You're right, there ought to be a law." And he sat down and wrote me out and introduced me to Congress, and I became a bill. And I'll remain a bill until they decide to make me a law. I'm just a bill, yes, I'm only a bill, and I got as far as Capitol Hill. Well, now I'm stuck in committee, and I'll sit here and wait while a few key congressmen discuss and debate whether they should let me be a law. I hope and pray that they will, but today I'm still just a bill.
Listen to those congressmen arguing. Is all that discussion and debate about you?
Yeah, I'm one of the lucky ones. Most bills never even get this far. I hope they decide to report on me favorably, otherwise I may die.
Die?
Yeah, die in committee. Oh, but it looks like I'm going to live. Now I go to the House of Representatives and they vote on me.
If they vote yes, what happens?
Then I go to the Senate and the whole thing starts all over again.
Oh, no.
Oh, yes. I'm just a bill.
Oh.
I'm only a bill. And if they vote for me on Capitol Hill, well, then I'm off to the White House where I'll wait in a line with a lot of other bills for the president to sign. And if he signs me, then I'll be alone. I hope and pray that he will. But today I'm still just a bill.
You mean even if the whole Congress says you should be a law, the president can still say no?
Yes, that's called a veto. If the president vetoes me, I have to go back to Congress and they vote on me again, and by that time this whole...
By that time, it's very unlikely that you become a law. It's not easy to become a law, is it?
No, but I hope and pray that I will. But today I am still just a bill. He signed your bill, now you're a law. Oh, yes.
Oh, yes!
Alright, we'll go ahead and we'll stop there.